Good morning, everybody. Today, Alvin and I are going over to the Pioneer Cemetery. It's a historical cemetery. For any of you that actually personally know me, you know that I'm really into historical things. I've already done some research on the cemetery. The reason it's called Pioneer Cemetery is because there are a lot of pioneers buried there that were coming out west, and, you know, they passed away here before they can continue on their journey. From what I read, there's also a lot of children that are buried there. It's really sad. There's also been one or two books written on the cemetery. But anyway, you guys stay tuned. Follow me along. While you're here, please like the video or dislike the video. I would love a comment. You know, if there's anywhere in Colorado that you think I should go visit or check out, please comment in the comment section down below and let me know. If you're new to the channel, welcome, and I hope to earn your subscription.
Well, it was in my childhood days, oh Lord, many long years ago. Now with the Spirit, now of my Savior, I was filled, Lord, filled, oh, in that old fashioned meeting. Oh Lord, our memories, they linger still in that little, oh, that wooden church house out on a hill. You know, every Sunday morning, help me hang the family prayer. Then to that old country wagon, oh, would feel, oh, Lord, oh, would feel. Well, we got on our journey, moving over rocks, God knows and real. That little, oh, that wooden church house out on a hill. Well, when that old-fashioned preacher, oh Lord, give out from me to him, then every heartbreak, now with the Holy Ghost, oh, would feel, oh Lord, oh, would feel. Well, people, they would be shouting, praise my God, I hear them still in that little, oh, that wooden church house out on a hill.
Okay, so I'm going to give you guys a little bit of history on the cemetery. I'm pulling this information from geocaching.com. So if you would like to do more research, feel free to do so. I do know that there is, I think, possibly 2 books that have been written about this cemetery. And this is the Florissant Pioneer Cemetery, which was established in 1874. So Florissant was established in June 1870 when the founder, Judge James Castello, built a trading post adjacent to a Ute Indian fort. In 1872, Judge Castello applied for an official post office, which he named Florissant, for his hometown in Missouri. Gold seekers and pioneers flooded into this area but were unable to file legal title to homesteads until a survey of the Pikes Peak region was published in 1876. Later, when the Colorado Midland Railroad arrived in 1886, scores of new families moved into the area. These early pioneers lost loved ones in the ebb and flow of life, and an informal cemetery sprang up among the aspens and pines. Many of the graves were marked by a simple wooden stake. The earliest burial was probably that of a child who died in 1874, but the cemetery is filled with dozens of unmarked graves with unknown dates as the wooden markers deteriorated and disappeared. There may very well be earlier burials. On August 27, 1886, Frank F. Castello, son of James, and his neighbors John Wilson and Valentine Hammond applied to El Paso County. Teller County was carved out of El Paso County in 1899 for a Florissant Cemetery Association. Frank Castello and John Wilson were named as the trustees. In November 1900, Frank Castello applied to have only himself named trustee of the Florissant Cemetery Association. The record is vague after this date, and the cemetery fell into disrepair. The Pikes Peak Historical Society began voluntary maintenance in 1988. In March 1992, the District Court in Teller County named the Pikes Peak Historical Society as the trustee of the cemetery. Many Florissant settlers with interesting stories are interred in this pioneer cemetery. As you drive into the cemetery, their burial sites are located at the top of the entry road on the right or to the west. So this article actually then goes on to mention a couple of families. The first it says here is Samuel, I'm probably pronouncing this last name incorrectly. I'm going to say Howarth. Samuel Howarth and his wife Zillah came to Florissant from England. Samuel was a trout fly tyer by trade, and his tide flies won first and second place in the 1904 World's Fair in St. Louis. He had a little business in Florissant selling his tide flies to fishermen. His wife Zillah died from burns when a kerosene lamp exploded in her hands. Their son Hubert was killed in a train wreck in Utah. All are buried here in Florissant in this cemetery. Then it also goes on to talk about the Castello family. James M. Castello was the founder of Florissant. The Castellos were on friendly terms with the Ute Indians. Catherine Castello, buried here, was given the name Heap Big Rocky Mountain Biscuit by the Utes, as she so often baked biscuits for the Utes who came to the Castello home. The Florissant Pioneer Cemetery contains the graves of several Civil War veterans. These grave sites are in row 8, just west of the Castello graves. To the left and south is the grave site of John M. Hensley. At age 37, Hensley, when living in Indiana, enlisted in Company H of the 99th Indiana Infantry. He transferred to the 59th Colored Infantry, which was a dangerous move. If a white officer, Hensley was a first lieutenant, commanding black troops was captured, the officer could be shot and his black soldiers returned to slavery. 15 years after the Civil War, Hensley and his wife went west, settling on a potato farm in Florissant. Hensley's true desire was to find gold. His hopes were dashed when his Florissant mine held no gold, only copper. He continued digging in his potato patch, not far from this cemetery, and on September 8, 1894, was found buried in a shaft. The Daily News, Denver, reported, "The work he has done, the sinking of an 86-foot shaft through solid granite, all alone and under the discouragement of all his friends, is probably the most marvelous feat ever accomplished by one lone man, especially by a man who is above 70 years of age." If you continue left or south to the gravesite of another Civil War veteran, David S. Portis, says here that David, born in Lancaster, Indiana, enlisted in the 14th Indiana Light Artillery Battery in 1862. At the Battle of Shiloh, David contracted chronic diarrhea and spent the remainder of the war in and out of hospitals. Like so many Civil War veterans, David suffered from lung disease and was advised to move to the dry climate of Colorado. David ranched in Colorado. At the time of his death, he received an invalid pension of $12 per month for the disability sustained in the Civil War. From the Portis grave sites, walk downhill or west to row 14. Here you will find the poignant grave sites of two young girls, Lena and Ina Thompson, daughters of Silas and Addie Thompson. Addie's wedding dress and family photos are on display at the Pikes Peak Historical Society Museum in Florissant. Addie wrote a marvelous memoir of her life in this area called Daughter of a Pioneer. Regarding the death of her daughter Lena, Addie wrote, "We sent to Colorado Springs for the little white coffin and the wreath of flowers. We put on the little red velvet dress that she loved, and she looked so dainty and sweet that the thought of giving her up was unbearable. As we stood by the grave, I became hysterical and tried to jump in, screaming as I did so, 'Oh, do not take her away. Let me be buried with her.'" That moment happened right here in the Florissant Cemetery. Well, thank you guys so much for coming along with me. I hope this video was informative and really opened your eyes to a little bit of local history if you're from this area. If you're not from this area, I hope you found it interesting, and maybe this inspires you to go check out your own local cemeteries in your own area. My father was a veteran, so I'm quite partial to veterans and quite partial to history. So I thought, out of all the cemeteries that I've been to, this one I believe is the most fascinating, just because of all of the stories that are held in this little cemetery with the people that are buried here. Anyway, thanks again so much. Please comment, please like, please subscribe, and I will see you guys on our next adventure. So enjoy the rest of the video.
Small graves, poor graves, lilies and the Virgin. Poetry slips from sagging limestone. Willow seeds in the May breeze glint like lingering souls. At the end of town, across from the funeral home and antique store, is an old cemetery. So many years have gone since anyone's been buried. It's more or less there for good looks. It's an old town after all. Stopped at the red light, looking at the stones. People with moms and dads and brothers and sisters and cousins and friends and bad habits and dreams and sad days and weddings and babies and to-do lists. It's an old town after all, more or less there